Creating tokens in Commander can provide you with a lot of opportunities. You can go wide and run past your opponents and attack their life total. You can create distractions for removal spells. You can even create creatures to suit up with the awesome enchantments and equipments that you have in your deck.
Today we're going to be talking about the best token generators for Commander in the color white, and the video starts right now.
Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who power our channel. Check out our Patreon for monthly giveaways, exclusive content, and even a starring role in our fan fight series. Link in the description below.
Hello and welcome to the day.
Thank you for spending your time with us.
I'm Jake.
I'm Joel. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. In this video, we are going to break down some of the best and some of our favorite token generators for the color white for Commander. But first, if you would, go down there and help us out. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It lets us know to make more videos like this.
It's the best way to support the channel with just the click of a button. Now let's go ahead and talk about some of the best cards that are going to allow you to generate tokens in EDH.
So starting with the color white for our token generator series, we have to talk about anointed procession. This is going to be one of the ultimate payoffs to some of the cards that we're going to look at today. The cards that we're looking at today, we are trying to focus on sticky cards, enchantments, creatures, planeswalkers that for a low mana value can continuously put tokens onto the battlefield. Cards like Anointed Procession, 1 white, 3 other. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead.
Now that should remind you of Doubling Season, which is a green card, and we should mention very quickly that a lot of the time in EDH, white and green and even black are all going to play alongside of each other in a junk tokens, or you'll often see like a green-white tokens kind of theme. However, we're not talking about green today, we are talking about white, and like Joel said, these are the payoffs. I'll tell you about Divine Visitation as well. 2 white, 3 other enchantment. If 1 or more creature tokens would be created under your control, that many 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance are created instead. So whenever you're creating a 1/1 or a 0/1, a plant token, instead it will be a 4/4 white angel creature token. So huge payoff here. However, we are not talking about these cards, but let's go ahead and get into the cards that we are talking about, which are the ways to create these tokens. And we're not even there yet. We're talking.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We're going to start off with Smothering Tithe. We mostly will be focusing on creature tokens being created in this video, but Smothering Tithe is like the top card in maybe all of EDH to create tokens of any kind, and it creates treasure tokens, 1 white, 3 other for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If that player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap, sack this artifact, add 1 mana of any color. With treasure tokens like that, since it's an artifact, it doesn't have summoning sickness, so you have instant access to that mana, and it can be mana of any color. And Jake, this really starts to add up. There's so much card draw in EDH.
Oh, this card right here, this is oh man, it's a beast of a card. If you have some sort of naturalize, any kind of like return to nature type effect to destroy it as quickly as possible if you are playing against it, because it will get out of hand and it will ramp you just absolutely to the moon. It should kind of remind you a little bit of Rhystic Study. It's one of those cards, it's just like a taxing kind of card. If you want to be able to play spells, you kind of have to let your opponent generate these treasure tokens, which are inevitably going to allow them to cast bigger things faster, and they're going to outrun you. So a very good card that came out in, honestly, recent years. This was our latest Ravnica set. Let's talk about the cards that are actually going to create creatures. We'll go ahead and start with Elspeth Sun's Champion. 2 white, 4 other for 4 loyalty. Planeswalker, put 3 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield is the +1 here. So that's the big effect that we're talking about on this card. This is going to allow us to repeatedly create 3 tokens. It's one of the best cards. It is a very expensive card at 6 mana. The -3, destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater, so it has some very nice board wipe effect for anything that's bigger than most of the tokens that you're going to be creating. And then that -7, you get an emblem with creatures you control, get +2/+2, and have flying. If you get to the ultimate, you're probably going to win the game. So, oh man, this card creates defenders, to protect it, I can't really think of a better planeswalker. It is expensive, but it is one of the best expensive planeswalkers that I can think of.
It does. It creates 3 1/1s, which is great value. Normally, a creature token, a 1/1 with no other abilities, costs about 2 mana in the game of Magic the Gathering. And so you already get a good mana return off this card. Good mana value, 6 mana, to get 3 1/1s right off the rip. You'll see this with some of the cards that we're going to talk about today. It might not be creating the most powerful token, but the abilities or the card's power level around the token generator part of it is going to add a lot more value than just the card maybe would. For 6 mana here, like Jake said, you also get a half board wipe, which can kill big creatures. And then since you're creating defenders for the Planeswalker, you have more likely of a chance to get to that emblem and activate that to make all your creatures 2/2 and flying. Speaking of flying creature tokens, Luminarch Ascension is next. 1 white, 1 other for an enchantment at the beginning of each opponent's end step. If you didn't lose life this turn, you may put a quest counter on it. And for 2 mana, put a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying onto the battlefield. Activate it only if it has 4 or more quest counters on it. So one time...
And that does not say sorcery speed either.
It's instant speed.
So once this is online, oh man, EOT, sync all of your available mana.
Right.
Anything you're not using into it, abuse it as much as possible, get the most out of it, because if your opponent is smart, they will be trying to remove this card. It is very, very, very good.
That's right.
Very easy to turn on.
One time around the board plus one opponent's turn is going to turn this on as long as nobody's doing damage to you. I've seen games end very early because someone was able to drop a turn 2 Luminarch Ascension, and it goes unanswered, and suddenly they've got almost infinite 4/4s at their disposal. Luminarch Ascension is definitely a card you're going to want to include in a lot of white decks.
You can easily go online turn 1 with it as well if you're starting off with the Mana Crypt in hand. I mean, it's just like, you're just like, all right, Luminarch Ascension, pass, and most of your opponents are just going to be playing a land. So yeah, it's just like, all right, cool, and it's activated. Let's go ahead and start making angels. Yeah, it's brutal. Dawn of Hope here, another enchantment, 1 white, 1 other. Whenever you gain life, you may pay 2 if you do draw a card, but that token generating ability right there on the bottom, 1 white, 3 other, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. So much more humble than the card we were just talking about. However, still very, very strong. And also this card represents a draw engine as well for whenever you gain life. So you're able to create these tokens, kind of throw them at your opponent, and then whatever happens to them, whether they're blocked or killed, do they get through, you can go ahead and pay 2 life to draw off of that effect. So that's really good.
This is an example of a card that the stuff around it makes the card better. 4 mana to get a 1/1 with lifelink isn't the best mana return. However, like Jake said, in a color that doesn't typically draw cards, having the ability to do it, even if you have to fulfill some requirement to do it, is a good effect. And for just being a 2 mana cost enchantment, you're going to get a really great card onto the battlefield for not much mana. God Eternal Oketra is up next. 2 white, 3 other for a legendary 3/6. Double Striker. Whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 4/4 black zombie warrior creature token with Vigi. And when God Eternal Oketra dies or is put into exile, you can put it back into your library 3rd from the top. So not only can this card be your commander if you wanted it to be, but as part of your 99, all you have to do is pay 5 mana and then cast a creature, and you're getting a 4/4 token. And that's on every cast. If you can cast multiple creatures in the same turn, you're going to get multiple 4/4 tokens onto the battlefield. This represents such a good mana return. 5 mana and a cast of a creature spell. You don't have to sink any more mana into it. For 5 mana, you're getting a 3/6. Even if you cast a 1 mana creature, you're getting a 4/4 right alongside it.
Yeah.
Plus, you have this creature that is so hard to get rid of. If it dies or it goes into exile, it's back in 3 card draws.
I would definitely add it into SRAM, just because SRAM, it starts off at a converted mana cost of 2. So that's a huge incentive. You know, if you have God Eternal Oketra on the battlefield, you cast SRAM, not only are you getting your general on the field, but now you're getting a 4/4 black zombie creature token. So yeah, it's a very strong card, and the reason this card is included, a lot of the time creatures aren't going to make it onto a list like this just because they're so easy to deal with in a game of EDH. But a card like this, Joel said it earlier, it's kind of like a pseudo indestructibility that's going on this card. Whether it dies or whether it's dies from damage or exiled, it's still going to come back. So it's kind of like a damned if I do, damned if I don't, and it also represents a go wide strategy all in and of itself. So very, very strong card.
There's a lot on that card for just 5 mana.
Now we're talking about Heliod, God of the Sun, a card that originally came to us in Theros. 1 white, 3 other for an indestructible 5/6. As long as your devotion to white is less than 5 Heliod as in a creature, white is the total number of white mana symbols the devotion is. Other creatures you control have vigilance, and here's the token generator effect. 2 white, 2 other, put a 2/1 white cleric enchantment creature token onto the battlefield. That token is going to have vigilance as well from Heliod, and like God Eternal Oketra that we were just talking about, Heliod here has indestructible. So it's one of these cards that is very, very difficult to deal with once it has made it to the battlefield. Remember that blue, black, and red are going to have trouble dealing with enchantments once they make it onto the battlefield, and especially when they're indestructible, even white and green at that point are going to have trouble dealing with cards like this. So easily one of the best token generators in my opinion.
Other relevant parts of this card is that it creates an enchantment creature token, so it does trigger anything that's checking for enchantments on your side of the battlefield. It's rare that you have this sort of, infinite, only limited by the amount of mana that you can pump into it way to just create enchantments to trigger any kind of enchantress thing you have going in your deck, so you might want to look at it for that use. Other than that, like Jake said, it's that indestructible 5/6 that also gives you passive Vigi on all of your creatures that really make this card worth it. Otherwise, that first 2/1 you're creating is 8 mana, and the second one is 4, the third one is 4, and so forth. However, if you have nothing else to do with your mana, that token generator part of it can really be valuable to go wide across your battlefield. Another way to go wide is with a second version of Elspeth. 4 mana total, 2 white, 2 other for a Planeswalker with 4 loyalty, +1, put a 1/1 white soldier creature token onto the battlefield, +1, target creature gets +3/+3 and gains flying until end of turn. And then if you can get it up to -8, which there's no minus abilities on this, so unless they're destroying it or attacking it, you're eventually going to get there. You get an emblem with artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and lands you control are indestructible. What an emblem, absolute house of an emblem, but for 4 mana, that's all you have to spend on this. You're going to get a repeatable way to put a 1/1 onto the battlefield every turn.
Yeah, any planeswalker that is able to create a blocker to protect it, and if it's like a flying blocker, I mean, oh my gosh, now we're talking about like the best possible thing, but just anything on the ground that can throw itself in front of the planeswalker against something that doesn't have evasion, those are the kind of planeswalkers that I like. And because this is a plus, meaning that because every time you're making a token, it isn't removing loyalty from this planeswalker, in theory, this is a great way to, without spending any mana, once this has resolved, once it's on the battlefield, this is a great token generation effect that does not affect your mana pool. It is just on the planeswalker. It is a great target for any kind of equipment that you have that's just laying around. I think that these Elspeths are really important to note just because planeswalkers, enchantments, they are sticky, like we said earlier. They're difficult to deal with. So yeah, the Elspeth has to be on this list.
I like the mana efficiency on this. I know I've been banging that drum a lot about these cards, but I think you have to consider it because you don't want to just play cards in your deck that, oh, I'm going to play this when my hand's empty and I have nothing else to do. You want to assume that you're going to cast other stuff after it. And like Jake said, being able to not have to spend any more mana and create a 1/1 creature. Token strategies are great at dodging sacrifice effects, for instance. And so if you have that 1/1 creature on the battlefield when an opponent forces you to sack something, pretty easy decision if you ask me. Emeria Angel is up next, Jake, if you want to talk to us about this one.
Yes, Emeria Angel, 2 white, 2 other for a 3/3 flying. Landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a 1/1 white bird creature token with flying onto the battlefield. So in the beginning of the video, we talked about anointed procession, divine visitation. This is one of those cards that's going to get the most value out of cards like those to really get extra effects out of those tokens. But simply from playing lands, once you have a Maria Angel on the battlefield, you're going to start to go wide, which is going to give you that edge against your opponent.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love landfall as a mechanic because you're going to get extra value from doing something that you need to be doing anyway and will be passively doing throughout the game. You want to play this on like turn 5 at the earliest, or once you have access to a land drop and you had 4 mana, if that makes sense, across some mana rocks. You want to play this so that you can still play your land on your turn. You will have spent 4 mana to get 4 flying power onto the battlefield, and that's a great return. Everything past that is gravy. Normally 1 mana for 1 flying power, that's already a fantastic return. And so if you do it in that order, you've covered yourself on that mana play, and then going forward, every time you drop a land, you get more flying creatures. Like Jake said, if you're combining it with Anointed Procession or Doubling Season, cards like that, Anointed Procession, Divine Visitation, you're able to double these or make them even bigger. This is the kind of passive effect that will just last throughout the game that you want to try and target when you're really looking at token generators. Hero of Bladehold, this is a little bit of a departure for us, and I'll explain why. 2 white, 2 other for a 3/4 knight. It's got an ability called Battle Cry, which is whenever the hero attacks, all of your other attacking creatures are going to get +1/+0 until end of turn. And it also has the passive that says whenever Hero of Bladehold attacks, put 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. If you combine this with some unblockable or some kind of
Whisper's Silk Cloak.
Yeah, creatures can't be blocked, creatures can't be targeted. A good goat attack battle deck where everything's always attacking and you're constantly attacking into untapped opponents, or tapped out, opponents. This card is going to thrive on the attack. It doesn't have haste, so at the base level, you're going to get a 3/4 for 4. On the attack, you're going to be attacking with 3 power from the hero, and you're going to be attacking with 4 power across 2 creature tokens that will have been created on the attack and are getting the effects of that battle cry. And so if you have a tapped out opponent, or you have a way for hero to attack and not be blocked so it won't die in combat, this card can repeatedly create tokens and power up your entire line whenever you want to attack.
Yeah, in certain situations, if you have Lightning Greaves on the battlefield as early as turn 2 and using mana rocks, you cast Hero Bladehold on turn 3, you can attach those Lightning Greaves and you're swinging through for a lot of power. 8 power specifically. So very, very strong card, and it does generate tokens. And yes, in situations where like a Key to the City or a Whisper Silk Cloak, something that's going to make the card unblockable, it's definitely going to thrive. And again, it's very difficult for a creature to make it onto a list like this, just because in EDH, typically creatures do get aced. However, the power level on this card is just so strong that it felt like it would be an injustice to leave it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's another creature, Jake, a cat soldier.
Yes, and another very mana efficient card. 2 white, 1 other for Brimaz, King of Ereskos, a 3/4 vigilance. Whenever Brimaz, King of Ereskos attacks, put a 1/1 white cat soldier creature token with vigilance onto the battlefield attacking. Whenever Brimaz blocks a creature, put a 1/1 white cat soldier creature token with vigilance onto the battlefield blocking that creature. So when it attacks, when it blocks, it's doing things, it's generating tokens. It's kind of like an all-in-one powerhouse all by itself. You suit this up with a couple big equipment, a couple big enchantments, and it's going to get out of hand very quickly. And it's so cool too. It's a cat, man.
A lot of the cat tribe has equipment synergies, and so mostly when you're building creatures like this into your deck, you're also going to have some great equipment payoffs as well. And so the ability, like Jake said, to Voltron up a card that is either your mono white commander or one of your 99 is going to lead to fantastic results, especially when you can go and get really powerful equipment, make it indestructible, give it trample. You know, these tokens coming in are attacking with it or blocking with it. It's got vigilance. I love that it does do it on the block, so you may, unless it gets targeted removal, get something of value out of it before you even get back around to your turn. I think that's that's pretty cool. And like Jake said, it's just, look at that crown, look at that sword. It's a very dope creature.
And a lot of the cards that you're seeing on this list today are going to thrive in equipment-based EDH decks. Decks where the token that you're creating, the token that you're generating, you can suit it up with an Argentum armor or a Sword of Fire and Ice. Give it some big, huge equipment that's going to allow it to just absolutely be a threat, because a lot of the time in EDH, a 1/1 is not going to get the job done. A 2/2 is not going to get the job done. So you have to have something that you can do to buff up these tokens to get the most out of them. However, token strategies are some of the most popular strategies in EDH. Let's talk about Gideon, ally of Zendikar, 2 white, 2 other for a 4 loyalty. +1 until end of turn. Gideon, ally of Zendikar, does what Gideon always does and becomes a 5/5 human soldier ally creature with indestructible. It's still a planeswalker. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to him this turn. And that 0 cost, that's that token generator ability that we love. Does not affect the planeswalker loyalty. Put a 2/2 white knight ally creature token onto the battlefield, and then just being able to fire off an emblem with that -4. You get an emblem with creatures you control get +1/+1, and emblems, as we all know, cannot be dealt with.
That's one of the big payoffs that you're going to want to look at for token strategies. Either suiting one of your tokens up and the rest are fodder for sacrifice effects, or using your entire line of tokens to build that army and then drop something like an Anthem, which is what that ability, that -4 emblem that Gideon creates, those are referred to as anthems. Creatures you control get +1/+1. All of your tokens are going to grow. You're going to have multiple of these types of effects in your deck, and that is how you're going to win the game. You're just going to attack with an army of 100 soldier tokens or 100 knight ally tokens in Gideon's case that are all grown and probably have protection from a color and are just overwhelming anything that your opponents can do. Mobilization is an enchantment for 3 mana, 1 white, 2 other. It says attacking doesn't cause soldiers to tap, so that's been Oracle texted to say soldiers you control have vigilance. And for 3 mana, you get to put a 1/1 white soldier creature token into play that will, because of the enchantment, have vigilance. Mobilization represents a really solid mana sink to me. The mana cost of the enchantment is reasonable, the mana cost of the ability is reasonable, and you get a passive side effect of giving all of your soldiers vigilance.
Yeah, very, very strong card. When we're talking about at the end of a turn, at the end of your opponent's turn, it's about to be your turn. Maybe you played something small, you weren't able to play that big thing, you're still a little far off from that. You have 3 mana left over, create a 1/1 before your turn. Just create a 1/1 with vigilance. Why not? And when the game gets super late, you might be doing that 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 times. It depends on how much mana and how late the game is going. Let's talk about Nihiri, the Lithomancer, and we have been talking about equipment, and this card is going to synergize really well with that. 2 white, 3 other for a 3 loyalty. With +2, put a 1/1 white core soldier creature token onto the battlefield.
There it is.
You may attach an equipment you control to it. So is it an Argentum armor? Is it a 10/10 hammer? Just attach it to whatever you have going. This is going to play really well alongside a card like Stram Senior Edificer, which says whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, draw a card. This is one of the best cards that you could play in that kind of deck. -2, you may put an equipment card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield. So did they destroy that card that was going to help you win the game? Get it back with this card right now.
That graveyard ability on that is what makes that -2 absolutely sing.
So good. And then the -10, put a colorless equipment artifact token named Stoneforged Blade. Stoneforged Blade onto the battlefield. It has indestructible. Equip creature gets +5/+5 and has double strike. And equip is 0. And Nihiri can also be your commander. However, I wouldn't do that in my opinion. However, I have seen people do it. But very good card. Very strong card. Designed in the spirit of Commander, and absolutely has to be on the list. It does everything that we want it to do.
A plus ability to create creature tokens, check. A -2 that gets equipment back from the graveyard, check. This one hits a lot of the right notes for themes and strategies you're going to want to build into a token generating deck. We talked about landfall on Emeria Angel, and here it is again on Felidar Retreat. 1 white, 3 other for an enchantment. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you get to choose to either create a 2/2 white cat beast creature token or put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control and they gain vigilance until end of turn. This is exactly what I was just talking about. Passive creation of tokens on something you're already going to be doing, which is dropping lands, and it's coupled with the ability to grow your line with an Anthem effect so that you can win the game.
Yeah, do you have too many tokens on the battlefield already? Is it really not tokens that you need at this point, and more so height to get over your opponent? Go ahead and use the second ability on Felidar Retreat. The versatility on this card made it pretty much an auto-include, and it's really cool that Zendikar Rising brought us such a potent, good EDH card for white as well. Normally, whenever a new set comes out, you scour it for the good EDH cards, and this one is just such a beautiful auto inclusion. You put this into something that has green in it as well, where you're able to start ramping out. You can do a lot of damage with Felidar Retreat very quickly. And again, doubling season, something that's going to double those counters, double those tokens. Anointed Procession, doubling those tokens. I mean, very, very strong card. It's one of the cards that I'm the most excited about, honestly, in recent MTG history. And for someone like me who doesn't normally like white, yeah, that says something. It's a really fun card.
Absolutely. Jake's absolutely right. The landfall thing with combining it with green also applies to Maria Angel, creating multiple 1/1 flyers.
Make those birds big. Let's go.
Right.
Like
exactly. Well, and that's what I was going to say. A Maria Angel and Felidar Retreat on the battlefield. Stack the triggers right. On every single land you play, you're creating a 2/2 bird, and the rest of all your creatures on the battlefield grow by +1/+1 permanently as well. If you are combining it with something like green, you're cultivating, you're explosive vegetationing, you're doing this multiple times in a turn with anointed procession or doubling season on the battlefield. Things are getting nutty and out of hand real quick. Obviously, we're talking about 4 very powerful cards all deltaing together and just synergizing like crazy, but that's what you want to do with building a strategy, any strategy really, not just token strategies, but any strategy into an EDH deck is create as much synergy and redundancy on your theme, on what you're trying to do, so that everything on the battlefield just adds and adds and adds. We've got a very similar card to Felidar, Jake,
little
here.
Uncommon.
Yeah, and Retreat to Emeria.
Here. 1 white, 3 other, Retreat to Emeria enchantment, and it has another landfall with a little bit of versatility action going on here. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, choose 1, create a 1/1 white core ally creature token, or creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So like a powered down Felidar Retreat, a strictly worse Felidar Retreat.
For sure.
However, when you're building redundancy into your EDH deck, these are the kind of effects that you're going to want. It's like, why not both?
Absolutely. There are a lot of other powerful cards that are sorceries or one-time creation of tokens that we left off of this video, but we thought that we wanted to really focus on permanents that would enter the battlefield and stay, and then residually create tokens that would come into the battlefield over and over again, whether that's landfall creation of those tokens, mana sink creation of those tokens, and then you drop some payoffs like anointed procession or divine visitation on top of that, and you've got a stew going, baby. You've got an engine that is just creating tokens, creating more powerful or double of those tokens, while you get to keep playing the game, and all of this is just running in the background almost.
Yeah, you have to think, as I'm sitting here and I'm in this 4-player game, this multiplayer game, what can I tinker with? I don't have any cards in hand. What can I put on the battlefield that I can tinker with and hopefully win the game with?
Those are our picks for token generators in white. Let's close the book.
We had a lot of fun putting this list together today, and there were a lot of cards. Actually, it's really funny. Mobilization. It was the first time I said to Joel, I was like, why have I never seen this card? This card is so good. So it's really nice being able to put together a list like this. We start to see some stuff that even we have missed throughout the years of playing Magic the Gathering. What did we miss? Leave it in the comments. I can't wait to hear about it and talk about it. But think about the criteria. You know, if it's just a creature that has a one-time effect, enters with a token, that's not exactly what we were looking for today. We're looking for something a little bit more impactful, a permanent, something that we can sink mana into later.
Make sure you check the playlist that this is in. We've got a token generator video for each color in Commander, as well as gold cards and artifacts and lands. So if you're building a token strategy into your Commander deck, absolutely need to go check those videos out and see if there's any cards you missed. Like Jake said, if there's any cards we missed, leave it in the comments below. That's where the conversation continues. If you want to support us further, we've got a Patreon. The link is down in the description below. Other than that, Jake, I'm tapped out.
Until next time, we'll see you on the flippity.